When people set goals, they're doing something powerful. A goal gives you a target. It gives you a direction. It's the mind saying, there's something out there I want, and that's a good thing. We need direction. Without it, we wander, we drift. Life starts happening to us instead of through us. So yes, goals are essential. They are the roadmap, they define the what, but they don't define the who. And that's where growth steps in. Most people chase goals because they believe the achievement will change their lives. Lose the weight, make the money, buy the house, earn the promotion. But here's the reality. Once you hit the goal, you're still left with yourself. And if that self hasn't changed, if it hasn't grown, then the goal doesn't transform you. It just becomes another thing you check off the list before asking, what's next? This is why people can achieve incredible external success and still feel empty inside, because their identity never caught up with the outcome. They climbed the mountain, only to realize they don't feel any taller. The view changed, but they didn't. When we talk about growth, we're not just talking about skills or knowledge. We're talking about evolution. We're talking about identity, how you see yourself, what you believe you're capable of, and how you respond when life pushes you to the edge. Growth builds the inner architecture required to sustain and multiply your success. You can chase a goal, but if you're not growing along the way, the moment you hit resistance, and you will hit resistance, you collapse, you quit. You tell yourself a story like, maybe it wasn't meant for me. But the truth isn't that the goal was wrong. The truth is that you didn't become the person who could handle it. Growth builds resilience. It teaches you how to think, how to adapt, how to stay grounded when everything around you is shaking. That doesn't come from the goal itself. It comes from the journey of becoming. That's identity. And identity isn't formed in the moment you achieve. It's built in the 1,000 moments when no one's watching. When you show up anyway. When you read the book, have the hard conversation, push past the limit, or choose the hard right over the easy wrong. Let's say someone wants to become a world-class speaker. That's a goal. It gives them direction. But the transformation won't come just from getting booked on a big stage. The transformation comes from the hours of practice, from confronting self-doubt, from learning to command attention, to articulate clearly, and from building emotional intelligence. What's happening there is not just preparation. What's happening is the construction of identity. That person isn't just checking off a goal. They're becoming a communicator. They're stepping into someone who owns the stage, commands energy, and delivers truth. Here's what most people do. They set goals, and then they only focus on hitting the goal. And if they miss it, they feel like a failure. But those who focus on growth understand that even if they fall short, they've still moved forward. They're not the same person anymore. That's the real win. You can miss the mark and still become more. And in time, that more becomes the foundation that helps you hit even bigger marks sustainably, powerfully, repeatedly. Now think about athletes, entrepreneurs, artists, anyone who consistently performs at a high level. The common denominator isn't just goal setting. It's identity sculpting. It's a deep, obsessive commitment to growth. They understand that success isn't something you chase. It's something you attract by becoming the kind of person who naturally operates at that level. Growth is the internal shift that gives birth to external results. It's why some people can set a goal, fall short, and still become unstoppable. Because the value wasn't just in the win, it was in the wiring. They were laying down new habits, new beliefs, new patterns. They were building a new version of themselves. And that new self, that's what carries them to the next goal, and the one after that, and the one beyond that. What's more, when you focus solely on goals without focusing on growth, you may reach the top of the ladder only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. Growth gives you the clarity to realign. It sharpens your instincts. It helps you recognize when a goal no longer serves you, not because you're afraid, but because you've outgrown it. That's powerful. That's evolution. And this is the difference between people who burn out after one big success and those who keep rising year after year. The first group was fueled by outcome. The second group was fueled by growth. The first group needed the goal to feel worthy. The second group used the goal as a reflection of who they were becoming. That's the power of building identity over chasing achievement. When you grow, your standards rise. You start to expect more from yourself, not out of pressure, but out of alignment. You start seeing yourself as someone who's capable of more, worthy of more, and responsible for more. You don't just do great things, you become someone who does great things over and over, with consistency, purpose, and power. There's a difference between achieving success and sustaining it. Anyone can have a great day. Anyone can hit a lucky break or get a moment in the spotlight. But long-term success, the kind that doesn't just show up once, but shows up again and again, that comes from something deeper. That comes from growth. We live in a culture that glorifies the hustle, grind harder, work longer, push through. And while there's a time for intensity, there's also a trap inside that mindset. Because if you're running towards success without developing the internal systems to sustain it, you might reach your goal, but you won't be able to hold it. Worse, you might burn yourself out trying to keep up with something you were never prepared for. Success without growth is like building a skyscraper on sand. You can go high, but the first storm will shake the whole thing to the ground. Growth is the foundation. It's the reinforcement that allows you to rise higher without collapsing under pressure. And real growth doesn't happen once a year in a weekend seminar. It happens in the repetition. It happens in the discomfort. It happens when you decide that who you are today is not the limit of who you're willing to become. You see, people often assume success will solve their problems, that when they get the raise, the title, the house, the recognition, then the stress will go away, the self-doubt will disappear, the frustration will fade. But what they don't realize is that every new level of success demands a higher version of you. It doesn't eliminate your challenges, it magnifies them. The pressure increases, the responsibilities multiply, and if you haven't built the capacity to handle more, the very thing you prayed for becomes the thing that breaks you. That's why growth isn't optional if you want to stay successful. It's the only thing that ensures your outer world doesn't outpace your inner world. Because when your external achievements exceed your internal development, eventually something snaps. The stress gets too loud, the cracks get too wide. You start making decisions from fear, from ego, from exhaustion. And that's when the downfall begins, not because you weren't capable, but because you stopped growing. Growth is what builds capacity. It gives you emotional range, mental clarity, spiritual grounding. It's not about being perfect. It's about becoming equipped to adapt, to adjust, to handle setbacks without unraveling, to face success without becoming complacent. It's that ongoing personal evolution that lets you not only reach your goals but rise beyond them, again and again, with stability and strength. Sustainable success isn't just about how far you go. It's about how long you can go there without losing yourself. That takes character. That takes maturity. That takes patience, discipline, humility. The things no one applauds on social media, but make all the difference in real life. And those qualities aren't born from external validation. They're cultivated through growth. Think about it. Look at any person who's built lasting success in business, in leadership, in relationships, in their art. You'll notice a common thread. They're learners. They're obsessed with becoming better, not just looking better. They don't sit on the throne of their past victories, they stay in the trenches, sharpening their tools, expanding their vision, facing their flaws. Because they know that if they stop growing, Their success becomes fragile, temporary, hollow. Growth makes your success deeper, more meaningful. It turns the numbers into purpose. It turns the milestones into movement. When you're growing, success stops being about proving something to others and starts becoming an expression of who you are. You don't need to pretend, to perform, to wear the mask. You operate from authenticity, from alignment, and that creates a different kind of impact, one that doesn't just impress, it inspires. People who chase quick success often look for shortcuts. But people who grow know there are no shortcuts worth taking. There's just the work, the internal work. The work of facing your insecurities, upgrading your mindset, developing your habits, elevating your standards. That work isn't glamorous. It's not loud. But it's what allows you to hold the weight of bigger dreams without breaking. Growth also protects your success from becoming toxic. Without growth, success can feed your ego instead of your soul. You start believing your own hype, you stop listening, you isolate yourself, and soon, the very success you were hungry for becomes the thing that disconnects you from yourself and others. But when you grow, success becomes a platform for contribution, not just celebration. You use it to elevate others, not just yourself. Another thing growth does is give you perspective. It teaches you how to measure success beyond the surface. You stop looking at just numbers, titles, or possessions. You start asking deeper questions. Am I proud of who I am becoming? Am I making decisions I'll respect 5 years from now? Am I building something that matters, or just something that sells? That kind of depth isn't automatic. It's earned through growth. In a world where speed is worshipped, growth teaches you to slow down and build wisely, to stop chasing applause and start creating value, to stop performing and start aligning, and from that place, your success becomes solid, rooted, expansive, because you're no longer afraid of losing it. You've become someone who can rebuild it, reinvent it, even surpass it if needed. You stop clinging to what you've built and start trusting in who you've become. Growth is not a moment. It's not a weekend retreat or a flash of inspiration. It's not the adrenaline of starting something new. Growth is a discipline. It's a practice. It's a commitment that demands something from you every single day. And the most powerful thing about real growth is that it's not accidental. It doesn't just happen because time passes. It happens because you make a decision, and then you keep making it, again and again, with intention, with clarity, and with consistency. People often say they want to grow, they want to improve, they want to evolve. But what they really mean is that they want the results of growth without engaging in the process of it. They want to wake up one day more confident, more successful, more fulfilled. But they're not willing to pay the price in the daily grind. Because real growth doesn't show up with a grand announcement. It shows up when you choose to do the difficult thing instead of the easy one. It shows up in the decisions no one sees, the effort no one praises, the habits that feel small but add up over time. Growth isn't sexy, it's not dramatic. Most of it looks boring on the surface. It looks like reading when you could be scrolling. It looks like journaling instead of complaining. It looks like working out when no one's watching. It looks like asking hard questions, facing uncomfortable truths, staying present when your mind wants to check out. Growth is unglamorous, but it's unshakable, and that's what makes it powerful. It requires intention because if you don't choose where you're growing, the world will decide for you. And the world will pull you in 100 different directions. It will sell you distractions disguised as opportunities. It will reward performance over substance. It will tempt you to chase validation instead of alignment. So if you're not intentional, you'll spend your energy chasing shadows instead of building something real. That's why daily effort matters, because growth doesn't live in the dramatic decisions. It lives in the ordinary ones. It's not forged in the heat of the moment. It's carved out in the quiet spaces of life. It's the way you show up when no one's clapping. It's the standard you hold yourself to when no one else is checking. It's the mindset you practice every morning, the beliefs you challenge every night, the vision you nurture when the path gets hard. If you think about anyone who's transformed their life, truly transformed it, they didn't get there through luck. They got there by doing something small but intentional every day. They made growth a lifestyle, not an event. They stopped waiting for the perfect time, the right motivation, or some outside permission. They started with what they had, where they were, and they did the work, the quiet, uncelebrated work, the kind of work that most people walk away from because it doesn't come with quick rewards. The reason most people never experience deep growth is because they underestimate the power of the small. They think if the change isn't massive, it's not worth it. But the truth is, massive change is the result of microscopic decisions. It's the compounded effect of showing up over and over, even when it doesn't feel like it's working. It's brushing off the voice that says, "This doesn't matter," and doing it anyway because you know who you're becoming through it. Growth also requires honesty. You have to look at your life and ask yourself where you're avoiding the hard things. Where are you coasting? Where are you repeating patterns that keep you comfortable but not fulfilled? You can't grow without confronting the places where you're stuck, and that kind of honesty doesn't happen once. It happens every day. You have to bring awareness to your choices, your reactions, your triggers, your excuses. Not to judge yourself, but to understand yourself. Because understanding is the beginning of transformation. And effort doesn't mean doing more. It means doing what matters. It's not about being busy. It's about being aligned. You can fill your day with activity and still not grow. But if you dedicate even 15 minutes to real, focused growth, reading something that challenges your thinking, reflecting on your actions, stretching your comfort zone, you begin to shift. The needle moves. Not all at once, but consistently. And consistency is what rewires your identity. You have to be willing to be bad at something before you're great at it. You have to be willing to feel awkward, to stumble, to get it wrong, to not see instant payoff. Because growth demands that you let go of the image and embrace the process. It doesn't care how impressive you look. It cares how committed you are. It rewards the person who shows up with humility and hunger, not the one who waits until they feel ready. And here's what's often misunderstood. Growth doesn't just change what you do. It changes what you tolerate, what you believe you deserve, what you allow into your life. When you grow, your standards rise. Your boundaries sharpen. You stop negotiating with your potential. You start making decisions that honor your future self, not just your current mood. That's what daily, intentional effort creates, not just success, but integrity, not just progress, but transformation. Not just a better life, but a better you. There's a moment when people start to realize that chasing goals isn't the ultimate strategy. It might work for a while. It might even give you the illusion of progress. But sooner or later, the pursuit itself starts to feel hollow if it's not built on something deeper. That something is growth. Because when you prioritize growth, goals stop being these distant milestones you're trying to chase down. Instead, they start happening as a natural byproduct of who you're becoming. You don't force them, they flow from the foundation you've built. Most people are obsessed with outcomes. They want the results. They want the weight loss, the business revenue, the perfect relationship, the spotlight. But they often skip the one thing that makes all of those possible in a sustainable way. Personal evolution. You can hustle your way to a goal. You can grind and sacrifice and push. But if your identity doesn't grow to match your ambition, the win won't last. Or worse, It won't satisfy you even when it arrives. That's what happens when achievement runs ahead of development. When you flip the script and begin with growth, everything changes. The question shifts from what do I want to who do I need to become? That shift is the difference between someone who dabbles in success and someone who lives in it. Because who you are dictates what you attract, how you perform, and what you can sustain. You could give two people the same opportunity, the same tools, the same path. One of them thrives, the other one flounders. The difference isn't the external condition, it's the internal readiness. That readiness comes from growth. When you focus on growing mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, you develop the traits that goals require. Discipline, clarity, patience, creativity, grit. Instead of trying to compensate with motivation or willpower, you become someone who naturally acts in alignment with high-level results. There's less internal resistance. You don't have to convince yourself to do what's right. You're becoming someone who can't not do it. That's where goals start to feel inevitable. You begin to operate from a different frequency. Your habits change, your standards rise, your tolerance for mediocrity drops. And slowly, almost silently, you move closer and closer to the things you used to think were so far away. But this time, you're not chasing them with desperation. You're rising to meet them with confidence. You're not hoping for luck. You're relying on alignment. Your external world starts to mirror the inner one you've been building through consistent effort and intentional change. Think of growth as the seed. You don't demand fruit from a tree the day after you plant it. You water it. You nurture it. You give it light, space, time. You trust the process. And eventually the fruit comes, not as a surprise, but as a natural expression of what's been happening beneath the surface. That's how life works. You grow in character, in resilience, in awareness, and one day you look up and realize the goals you used to obsess over are now part of your life. Not because you pushed harder, but because you became someone who was ready to hold them. That's the part most people miss. They think the goal is the solution, but the goal is the test. It tests whether you've done the work to hold it, to honor it, to expand it. You can land the job, but can you lead in that position? You can get into the relationship, but can you communicate with maturity? You can launch the business, but can you weather the setbacks and scale with vision? Growth answers those questions long before the goal arrives. And when the goal does show up, you're not surprised. You're prepared. When you prioritize growth, you no longer live in reaction. You live in design. You stop looking for shortcuts and start building systems. You stop chasing fads and start mastering fundamentals. And the incredible thing is, as you grow, your goals evolve too. What once felt massive starts to feel like a starting point. Not because you're ungrateful, but because your capacity has expanded. Your lens gets wider. You begin to dream on a new level because you've become someone who can handle more responsibility, more risk, more reward. People often look at high performers and wonder how they stay consistent, how they keep winning. The answer isn't talent or luck. It's that they fell in love with growth. They became students of themselves. They built a life where the process was as fulfilling as the outcome. And because they prioritized that process, the wins became inevitable, not easy, not instant, but certain as long as they kept showing up and doing the internal work. And what's even more powerful is that growth gives you the wisdom to know which goals are actually worth pursuing. Because not every goal is aligned, not every outcome leads to fulfillment. But when you grow first, you gain the discernment to see clearly. You stop setting goals out of insecurity or pressure. You start setting goals that reflect your deepest values and highest potential. And that alignment creates acceleration. It creates momentum. It creates impact, not just success that looks good from the outside, but success that feels real on the inside. So the shift is simple but profound. Don't chase the goal. Chase the growth that makes the goal inevitable. Because when you become more, you naturally do more. When you expand, your results expand with you. Not through force, but through flow. Not through burnout, but through embodiment. Growth isn't something that delays your goals. It's what guarantees them. There's a misconception that transformation is something you pursue. That if you want to change your life, you need to chase after something dramatic, do something massive, or have a breakthrough moment that shifts everything at once. But real transformation doesn't work like that. It's not an event. It's not a switch you flip. Transformation is a result. And that result comes from a deeper, more personal process. Your own evolution. Who you become shapes everything you experience. And when you evolve, your life transforms as a natural outcome. People often look for external changes to feel internal shifts. They think if they can just change their environment, their job, their relationship, their body, or their income, then finally they'll feel like a new version of themselves. But what they discover is that even after the external things change, the old patterns remain. The same doubts, fears, and reactions resurface because the person behind the success never actually changed. The packaging changed, but the operating system stayed the same. That's why real transformation starts on the inside. It begins when you decide that your current identity is not the final version of who you're capable of being. It's when you stop trying to rearrange the outside of your life and start reshaping the inside. You evolve not by chasing something new, but by shedding what no longer fits. Old beliefs, outdated narratives, inherited limitations, they all have to be questioned, challenged, and replaced with something stronger, something true to who you are becoming. Personal evolution is the ongoing work of aligning your behavior with your highest potential. It's the process of raising your internal standards so that your external world begins to catch up. You stop asking what you need to get and start asking who you need to be. That's where the shift happens. Because when your identity changes, your habits change, your energy changes, your choices change, and once those change, transformation doesn't need to be forced. It becomes inevitable. You can see this in any area of life. Take health, for example. A person can follow a fitness plan and lose weight. But if they still see themselves as someone who struggles with discipline or someone who always falls back into old habits, that identity will eventually pull them back. But if they begin to identify as someone who takes care of their body, someone who values energy, someone who chooses long-term health over short-term comfort, then the behavior becomes natural. The transformation sticks, not because they pushed harder, but because they became someone different. That's what personal evolution does. It changes what feels normal to you. It upgrades your baseline. Things that used to require effort start becoming effortless because they now align with who you are. You're no longer fighting against your old self. You're being led by your new one. That's when transformation becomes sustainable. Because you're not maintaining results through willpower alone. You're living from a different place entirely. What's powerful is that personal evolution doesn't need massive external validation. It often starts in private. It's subtle. It looks like a different decision made in a quiet moment. It looks like holding your boundaries, speaking with more clarity, choosing integrity when no one's watching. These small shifts build over time, and suddenly you wake up one day and realize your life feels different. Not because you forced it, but because you've grown into it. And the truth is, transformation built on personal evolution is unshakable. When the outer world changes, and it will, you don't fall apart. Because you've built something inside that circumstances can't touch. You're rooted in who you are. You've created a center that doesn't collapse when things get hard. You don't just react, you respond. You don't just survive, you adapt. And that makes you powerful in ways that shortcuts and hacks can never replicate. People often want the outcome without the identity. They want the success without the evolution. But transformation is not about upgrading your life. It's about upgrading you. And when you change, everything you touch begins to change with you. Your relationships evolve. Your career takes on new meaning. Your habits align with purpose. You start to experience life through a different lens, not because the world is different, but because you are. This kind of change requires depth. It requires honesty. You have to be willing to let go of parts of yourself that have kept you safe but small. You have to step into the unknown parts of your character, the parts that haven't been developed yet, the parts that scare you, the parts that call you higher. That's the nature of evolution. It doesn't ask who you've been, it asks who you're ready to become. And becoming that version of yourself is not a matter of chance. It's a matter of choice. A choice repeated every day through every thought, action, and belief you commit to. You don't become transformed by chasing transformation. You become transformed by becoming someone new, someone wiser, stronger, clearer, more grounded, more open, more intentional. And that someone starts to live differently, lead differently, love differently. The world begins to respond in kind. Opportunities show up. Clarity sharpens, energy rises, not because you reached for something new, but because you finally allowed yourself to grow into it. That's how personal evolution leads to lasting transformation, not just of your results, but of your entire reality. You've heard the message. Now it's time to live it. This isn't just about setting bigger goals. It's about becoming a bigger version of yourself. It's about shifting your focus from chasing outcomes to cultivating the one thing that makes all outcomes possible: growth. Because when you grow, everything around you begins to transform. Your thoughts, your habits, your relationships, your results. Goals can give you direction, but growth shapes your identity. Growth gives your success the strength to last. And it's not occasional. It's daily, intentional, uncomfortable, and deeply personal. When you prioritize growth, your goals stop feeling like struggles and start becoming side effects. They happen because of who you are, not in spite of who you're pretending to be. And if you truly want to transform not just your achievements, but your life, then stop waiting for some massive breakthrough. You don't need more motivation. You need alignment. You need discipline. You need evolution. And the beautiful truth is, once you commit to becoming more, you'll realize your biggest goals were never the finish line. They were just mile markers on the path to who you were meant to be. So step up, show up, grow, on purpose. Because transformation isn't found in what you reach for. It's found in who you rise into.